CNN, desperate for ratings, turns to something really radical, telling the truth and actually reporting the news. Since the departure of Donald Trump, it has been well documented that cable news sources have absolutely suffered a pummeling in the ratings. They are absolutely just dropping off entirely. Programs like Humpty Dumpty, Brian Stelter have had a near 70% drop in the ratings since Donald J. Trump left office. Even Faux Pas News, formerly known as Fox News, has suffered a crushing blow in its ratings. About the only one that's really held on to his audience is Tucker Carlson. That said, CNN doing an expose on the coronavirus and its origins actually did something over the weekend which gave credence to something that President Trump, members of his administration, and many of us in conservative media were saying over a year ago about the virus. That its origin was from an outbreak in a lab, had nothing to do with bats. Dr. Robert Redfield, one-time director of the CDC, was being interviewed by CNN when he gave his hypothesis, his best guess of how coronavirus actually got started.
If I was to guess, this virus started transmitting somewhere in September, October in Wuhan.
September, October.
That's my own view. It's an only opinion. I'm allowed to have opinions now. I am of the point of view that I still think the most likely etiology of this pathogen in Wuhan was from a laboratory. Escaped. Other people don't believe that. That's fine. Science will eventually figure it out. It's not unusual for respiratory pathogens that are being worked on in a laboratory to infect a laboratory worker.
It is also not unusual for that type of research to be occurring in Wuhan. The city is a widely known center for viral studies in China, including the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which has experimented extensively with bat coronaviruses.
It is a remarkable conversation I feel like we're having here, because you are the former CDC director and you were the director at the time this was all happening.
For the first time, the former CDC director is stating publicly that he believes this pandemic started months earlier than we knew, and that it originated not at a wet market, but inside a lab in China.
These are two significant things to say, Dr. Redfield.
That's not implying any intentionality. It's my opinion, right? But I am a virologist. I have spent my life in virology. I do not believe this somehow came from a bat to a human, and at that moment in time, the virus that came to the human became one of the most infectious viruses that we know in humanity for human-to-human transmission. Normally when a pathogen goes from a zoonotic to human, it takes a while for it to figure out how to become more and more efficient in human-to-human transmission. I just don't think this makes biological sense.
So in the lab, do you think that process of becoming more efficient was happening? Is that what you were suggesting?
Yeah, let's just say I have coronavirus that I'm working on. Most of us in the lab, we're trying to grow a virus. We try to help make it grow better and better and better and better and better and better so we can do experiments and figure out about it. That's the way I put it together.
Bum, ba-dum, bum. We were saying this a year ago. We were laughed at, we were lampooned, we were censored, we were deplatformed, we were restricted, we were fact-checked. And here comes the former director of the CDC saying, listen, I've been a biologist for years, and there just is no other time in history where a contaminated animal interacting, somehow passing a pathogen onto a human being would have this amount of mass spread this quickly. It's scientifically impossible. Now look, we're going to cut straight to the chase here. We reported on over a year ago the fact that here in the United States, under the direction of a certain doctor who I can't mention or YouTube will get upset, but let's just say he is now considered the patron saint of what to do when it comes to this virus, despite his numerous flips and flops and outright lies. Are you figuring out? I'm talking about the little guy with the glasses. He, in his lab, was experimenting with coronavirus. Now, was it because of other infectious diseases that we were dealing with that they somehow thought that, COVID was going to be the next big thing, so let's study that so we have a treatment ready? There could be some truth to that. There could also be some truth to the fact that that same individual had espoused that biowarfare was going to be a real problem in the future, and we needed to be prepared for it. So was he experimenting with it just in case some other nation of the world decided to unleash a bioweapon on us and we needed to be prepared for it? Yeah, I would say there is some truth to that. And could there be just a little bit of truth to the fact that maybe we were delving into areas that bordered on ourselves developing a bioweapon, and when that was discovered and pressure was put on the Obama administration, the program was shut down stateside. Didn't stop. It was just relocated to another nation, which again, we have to be careful about naming. Otherwise, because we're an independent voice, they'll just slap a padlock over my mouth and that'll be the end of this. So you know where I'm talking about. And isn't it amazing that it was the esteemed little doctor with the glasses who picked the lab? Now, there are others reporting on this, especially in progressive media, because their heads are exploding that, you mean Donald Trump and some of those crazies in right-wing media might have been right? Shazam, Batman, welcome to the party. You're a little late, but we're glad you finally got here. Now, right away, they're saying, and they're backing up what Dr. Redfield said, well, we're not assigning blame that it was done intentionally. This was an accident. Really? Some lab technician went to his director one day and says, oops, my bad, it accidentally got outside. Are you kidding me? Well, now, Pastor Marty, what possible intent could they have in releasing it? It would hurt their own people. Yes, and I'm not necessarily saying that they wanted to thin out their overpopulated herd. But if there is a greater mass agenda at work, and again, I am hypothesizing, want to be clear on that. This is simply an opinion, a theory, a counter theory to the theory, well, this couldn't have been done on purpose. Well, let's just pretend that it was, maybe. What could the possible benefits be to nations having their own populace infected, sick, and in some cases dying? If your ultimate goal is the police state, the surveillance state, I mean, we are under 24-hour surveillance, whether it's by TV cameras at stoplights, they track us on our cell phones through GPS where we're going, and we're now hearing that GPS is going to get so advanced that insurance companies will be able to decide while you're on a trip if they think that where you're going is not a good place to go, and they decide not to cover you or to charge you extra for going there. I mean, there's a whole lot of agendas at play all at the same time here. On the one hand, you've got the nuts like AOC that really want the Green New Deal, and they're the environmental wackos, as Rush Limbaugh used to so aptly call them, that obviously we've got to get rid of these freedom vehicles called cars. These are bad. We just need high-speed rail. Yeah, because that works so well out in the country. That works so well in sparsely populated places. No, you can't have your own automobile. That means mobility. Mobility equals, ta-da, freedom. And we need to control where you're going and why you're going there and when you can go there, and we'll decide what you can do and when you can't do it. So we've got to force you into mass transportation. We'll do it under the guise of we're saving the planet. Fossil fuels killing the planet. So you have that agenda at work. And there's another agenda of overall wanting to simply track and trace where you are and what you're doing so that they can ultimately control if you can or can't do business. Now, I could wax biblical here, and I could bring in the book of Revelation, and we could start talking about the setup for the mark of the beast, where unless you receive the mark of the beast, you cannot transact any business whatsoever. And that's where they're heading with this vaccine. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now, remember, the enemy within of the Trump administration, Vice President Pence, a guy closely associated with Dr. Fauci, who actually picked him to head the Corona Task Force under the Trump administration. He sat there one night with Laura Ingraham and he insisted there would be no mandated vaccine. Now, Laura tried to push him on it. He did the typical politician doublespeak. You people that think that Mike Pence is just this mild-mannered Christian gentleman, on that. He is the enemy within. Always has been. I outed him 2 years ago for that, and I got excoriated by many in conservative media. Now there's a few that have figured it out. It is true. He was the enemy within, and the rest that excoriated me, they're now being just very strangely quiet because they get it and they embarrass themselves by sticking with that guy. So let me break down the scenario, the possible scenario of what this looks like. You don't have to get the vaccination, but you won't be able to get on a plane. You won't be able to get into a movie theater or any venue of a large crowd, like if you want to go back to concerts, ball games, big events. You're going to have the vaccine. And the simple, fast way that we can prove you've had it, we need to scan your phone. You'll just have the little digital print there. Yep, I got it. And eventually, they're not going to want to just put it in your phone. They're going to put it in you. That's why Bill Gates has developed the technology to do that. It's track and trace. It's not about your health and safety. It's about where are you, what are you doing, and who are you doing it with. Aren't you so glad Joe Biden's the president now? See, This is happening at warp speed now. And I'm not talking about a vaccine rollout. I'm talking about the absolute deterioration of American liberty. It's happening at warp speed. And the thing is, we have half of the U.S. citizen lining up and saying, "Thank you, Mr. President, may I have another? Thank you, Mr. President, may I have another? Here's my freedoms, please. Just let me feel safe and don't take my Uber Eats away from me." Oh yeah, Uber Eats is now, it has no longer about, we want to give you contactless delivery so that you can be safe. If you don't get the vaccine, Uber Eats has said maybe they won't deliver to your house. See, they're doing with this like they do with gun control. They know that there's this Second Amendment that gets in their way, so they can't really take them away. Eventually they'll get around to that with the stroke of a pen, and they just won't care anymore. But for right now, they play the games where, okay, they know that the Second Amendment's in the way, so they just make it really expensive to own one. They make it near next to impossible to find ammunition if you've got one. Or they're going to do the same thing with this vaccine. Well, we're not mandating that you get it, but you aren't going to be able to go to school here. Yes, there are now universities saying that students who do not get the vaccine cannot return to class, cannot live on campus. And this is the way they are going to regulate every area of your life. You do know that they don't care that they're tanking the economy right now, right? They don't care that the gas prices are going up. Again, that helps them because it drives up fossil fuel costs, which means you will look for other ways of transporting because they want fossil fuel to go bye, 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 bye. And they don't care if they kill the economy to do that. They don't care that lockdowns and shutdowns have nearly wiped out half of independent entrepreneurial business here in the United States. You're going to be forced, as a worker bee, to work for the government-approved corporations, which are in bed with the government. Amazing what great years Amazon and Walmart and the big corporate entities had during a pandemic and a lockdown. And that'll be the only places you'll be able to go, not only to do your commerce, but to get work. Forget trying to start your own gig. See, because if you do your own gig, you'll make your own rules. You might let your employees not be vaccinated. You know, you'll actually use things like cash. Do you see how this is all playing out? And some of us, we warned you. We warned you. And here it is. Because, you know, Trump tweeted me things. Mean. But you had a rocking economy, and you had liberty. Now you have what we're called the reset, the return of civility. Isn't that what the rhinos, like John Kasich, said in his endorsement of Joe Biden as president? It's the return of civility, politics that are polite. Yes, it's polite, with razor wire around the Capitol, censoring of Dr. Seuss books. Now you have Oxford University saying that sheet music is racist. And the insanity continues, and the band played on. You've got the New York Times now out there absolutely excoriating Dr. Robert Redfield. But all of a sudden, there are progressives waking up saying, wait a minute, you mean this really was hatched in a lab? Oh, there's still something, it was an accident that it got out. Eventually, Kyle Kalinske over there at Secular Talk, Crystal and Sagar at The Hill, you're going to start figuring this out. Jimmy Dore, you're going to start figuring this out. They put it to us again. Because again, this isn't about left versus right. It's about right versus wrong. It is about liberal versus conservative, Republican versus Democrat. It's about them versus us. And I've said it before, and I will say it again. The independent conservative voices in this country have far more in common now with the true liberal progressives than we do the so-called establishment Republicans or the establishment Democrats. This is about an attack on liberty. It's not about health. It's not about safety. It's about liberty. Oh yeah, make sure you're a subscriber to the channel, smack the bell, click the word all to get notification of my next rant.